One Finance and Moneycontrol present Personal Finance Unlocked. Download the One Finance app. Investments in the securities market are subject to market risks. Read all the related documents carefully before investing.
Hello and a very warm welcome to our enlightening webisode, Personal Finance Unlocked by One Finance, powered by Moneycontrol, where we embark on a captivating journey into the realm of investments and assets. In this thought-provoking exploration, we will set the stage by delving into the profound connection between financial well-being and mental well-being. Beyond mere financial sufficiency for basic necessities, achieving financial well-being empowers individuals with a heightened sense of security, stability, and the freedom to pursue their aspirations unencumbered by financial limitations. By alleviating the stress and anxiety associated with monetary concerns, it enables individuals to make well-informed decisions, fostering a sense of control over their future. This webisode will shed light on the vital pillars of financial well-being, including the accumulation of adequate funds to meet immediate requirements and the capacity to save and invest wisely, safeguarding long-term financial stability. Take, for instance, the dream of many Indian parents to send their children to esteemed Ivy League institutions. Realizing such aspirations necessitates careful financial planning and a deep understanding of investments and assets to maximize returns and build essential resources. We will highlight the significance of investment planning, a critical piece of the puzzle called holistic financial being. And to explore this and more, we have with us Nisreen Mamji, CEO MoneyWorks, who will share her insights and expertise in the field of financial planning and investment strategies. Nisreen, welcome to the show and for taking time for us.
Thank you so much for having me here.
So Nisreen, my first question to you is, how is investment planning different from financial planning? And when we look at investment planning, a lot of people think savings are as good as investments, whereas in one case, you are parking your money and in the other, you're growing your money. So would love to know your deliberations on this.
So basically, there's a little difference between financial planning and investment planning. So financial planning is a rather more, macro outlook, whereby you undertake cash flow management, you undertake tax planning, retirement planning, as well as investment planning. So investment planning is only the part where, you decide which is the best instrument for you, and how long that will be for and what are the returns that will give you. So financial planning is a rather more macro and a larger view than the actual investment planning. Now, as far as your query on savings and investments goes, basically, we always forget about the factor of inflation. So if you are considering making a savings plan, then and you're looking at fixed deposits, which is giving you a return which is more or less on par with your inflation rates, you're really not moving ahead in your real return. So investment planning would make sure that there's going to be some sort of a real return or alpha on the nominal return, so that you're actually moving ahead in your investment journey. So that's the basic difference. Savings would include typical, fixed deposit plans,
right,
savings account, recurring accounts, any kind of national savings certificate, etc. All of these funds, all of these products will give you something very close to the risk-free return. So, no risk, no gain. It's like that.
When we talk about financial planning, diversification is so important. Diversity in the portfolio is so important, but most people do not account for that diversity in their portfolios, wondering how much should be put in a certain asset. Sometimes they feel, I don't have enough money to put in all assets, so everything is parked in one portfolio. How important is it to then know the importance of diversifying? And also, when we are looking at stocks and mutual funds and other bonds, where do you see all of them come, and what should be the percentage?
See, typically what happens is that the reason that you need to diversify your portfolio across various asset classes is basically to give you stability and to make sure that you will make your desired rate of return. Because every asset class follows a different life cycle.
True.
So, for example, property will be nearly a 20 to 30-year life cycle. Gold is typically a 10 to 11-year life cycle. Bonds will be typically a 5-year life cycle. Shorter term bonds will be a 1 year or less than 1 year, and equity is typically a 3-year life cycle. So unless you have a little bit of all these components into your major investment planning, if you are too skewed, for example, towards equities, and there is a certain correction in the market and you need your money at that time, then you will not be able to plan your emergency funding. So it's very important for you to consider some amount of your assets, say at least 20 to 25%, into liquid options where you can liquidate it very easily without it affecting the rest of your portfolio. Some amount of your assets has to be in long-term planning, which is typically a child's education or your own retirement planning. So that could be invested for, say, a 10 to 15-year horizon, and you could consider 100% equity in that. To hedge your portfolio, you could also have some amount of gold or commodities if you are a risk-averse investor and you don't want to see too much volatility even in the shorter term. And of course, fixed income or bonds is for something that you want to invest, for less than 1 year, or even in the 1 to 3 year period, we would consider fixed income or bonds.
But one of the things that when I meet young people, they always say, why should we plan for the retirement right now? And one of the things that I learned was that you should start keeping money away for retirement as well. But if we were to divide the different stages, how does that play out in your whole financial journey?
It's really funny that you said that, because young people, cannot really fathom what it is to get old and to actually pay then for your retirement period. But the odd thing is that they should start their retirement planning right from their first salary check.
Wow.
So in the US, they have something called the 401k, which is mandatory for every individual to put away some amount for their retirement years. Now in India, we don't really have this kind of pension schemes. We probably won't even have joint family systems going forwards.
Right.
So it's really imperative for us to plan for your retirement right from day one. And the thumb rule is 100 minus your age. That's what you need to be invested in equities. So if a person is, say, about 25 years of age and they are starting out in their financial journey, 75% of their investable surplus should be typically invested into equities. Now, younger people also stay at home with parents. They may not be married. So the only expenses that they have is typically their own, recreation or shopping or going out. So they have to manage to save a lot of that into for a future plan and let the magic of power of compounding work for them. When you get a little older, you will have your own, family responsibilities. You'll have school fees. You'll probably have home EMIs. So in the years between 30 to 45, typically your investable surplus is a bit stretched. Okay. Also, you are into the middle management at that time. So, your income level is higher than it was when you were 25. So it's very important to understand the nuances of financial planning and to start that, earlier in your financial journey, so that that surplus is always put away at good use, rather than, spending it in the shorter term, which is also, a big temptation. You go for a holiday, get a better car.
True.
So those are the things that you need to be wary of, because saving is just spending in the future. An investment plan is something that you're not spending today, but you're spending it 30 years later.
So I always feel that, for a woman to specially decide with what stage of her life her financial plan would change is so important.
Yeah, it's really nice that you said that. For women, also women are better investors because they don't get stuck with, looking at the portfolio every day and saying, oh my God, it's gone up, it's gone down. They basically invest and forget about it.
Yeah.
So male investors sometimes tend to get a little more concerned with the volatility. But if you have a longer term view, the volatility really will not affect you. And women, of course, may take sabbaticals for, child giving or maybe even looking after older parents. So those things do come up, unfortunately, in the life of a woman. And this is not only in India, it is a global phenomenon.
Yes.
And women need to have some sort of a corpus so that, when the days that they are not, the months or the years that they are not working, they have some sort of a steady stream coming to them for their personal needs. And for home requirements, of course.
One of the things I've seen people talk about very often is, I don't make enough money to save enough money. Or we have a lot of money, so we don't need to save. It goes towards both extremes when at both levels you need to have that discipline of putting money aside, whatever little money it is.
So especially if you're an equity investor and the markets are going up, then you are always greedy that it's going to go up further, and you keep on investing money in the time, in the boom time, when actually you should be investing at the recession time. Sure. So unfortunately, we always find somebody buys here and sells here when it should be the other way around. So that is something that you should be wary about. Also, you need not be fearful. If you are a long-term investor, then pull out your money only if you have met a goal, or if there is some kind of emergency where, it doesn't really matter where you are in terms of returns. You also have to do some sort of analysis on yourself, your tenure of investment, what you're planning for, whether it's a short-term need like buying a car or going on a holiday, or a longer-term need like a child's education and finally your retirement. So just stay the path, because in the end, everything works out well.
Tell us about what do advisors bring to the table, and is it a myth when people say, oh, but I don't have that kind of money, so how should I afford them? Or they are only meant for people who have larger portfolios?
Now, even if you say you don't have money, but obviously you are an earning individual. So, the planner will also explain to you how to reduce your expenses and thereby create an investable surplus, because they would do a detailed analysis of your expenses as well, even of the entire family. Most of the time we have couples who come to visit us, and we do the detailed analysis. Women these days always want to plan themselves, so the banking account is separate, the investment planning is separate, and then some amount is joint. Okay, so because you also have to look at the fact that, God forbid, you're not joint in future, you would have to make sure that both of the individuals have spent equally on expenses, and both of them have their own individual surpluses. So these sort of things are, only if you go to a professional will you get that understanding and knowledge, because when you start your journey as a couple, you don't really consider these points. Also, it's a longer journey. It's not transaction based, where you said, okay, I have X amount to invest and this is what I should do. It doesn't really work like that. We're more like financial doctors, where you undertake the history of the of the patient, so-called the financial patient, and then you plan the journey. So you have to walk together hand in hand.
So I think one of the things with investment advisors is also periodic review, and I think most of us don't do that once we park our money and then we realize, shucks, we could have made more money had we put it in the right instrument at the right time.
So this is something that you have to do periodically, and that's part of the process of a financial planner, that you're invited for annual reviews, 6-month reviews. If you want to do it 3-monthly also, it's absolutely possible. Of course, the portfolio will not be churned that many times, because you have to let the portfolio work for you also. But reviews are absolutely necessary for the comfort level of the investor as well as the planner, because sometimes there are changes in the person's life. Okay, so unless you go back for a review, there might be one child. After a few years, you might have another child. You might have a dependent parent in the years that are to continue. So it's very important to let your planner know how your life is changing. Or you might have just got a big bonus and said, I'm just going to go and buy this car, which I've always wanted. So then the planner will definitely put you on track and say, you should buy a car, but not this one. So there has to be some amount of investment put also, or you can pay back your loans. So there are a lot of things that the planner will bring to the table, and you need to have somebody to guide you.
Let's just talk about the different type of investment tools that are available, and what should one be thinking when they are looking at them in terms of the features, risk appetite, potential returns associated with them. If you could briefly touch upon that.
Sure.
As well.
So the main asset classes in financial planning would be equity, fixed income, gold and commodities, and real estate would be a physical asset. So if you consider, as I mentioned earlier, each of them has a different life cycle. Also, some of them have entry loads. Like if you're buying a property, you will have to have stamp duty and registration associated with that purchase. It is not very liquid, that investment. So if you're considering that you're going to park your money into a property for, say, a 5 or 10 year period, that property may not even appreciate. You will get 2% yield on that property. And when you want to sell it, say if you have an emergency and you want to sell that property, it may not be easily sold. So if you're living in it, then it's not an asset. You're not really looking at it as a physical asset. From the financial assets point of view, equity, there is possibly a longer time span. It will go up, but it might also go down. So there will be volatility, and you will have to have the risk appetite to go through that volatility. But you're not stuck to a particular coupon rate like you will in a debt instrument, like a fixed deposit or in a fixed income or a debt mutual fund. So if they tell you that, in a fixed deposit, you're going to get about 6%.
7%.
7%, that's all you'll get. You'll never get more. In equity, there's a possibility of getting a higher return at some point of time. At some point of time, in a shorter time span, it can also be lower. So if you are the kind of person who seeks a higher return, but is prepared to withstand the volatility, then of course you can be opting for equity, which can be either an equity mutual fund or direct equity, which is stocks.
Right.
Debt mutual funds also have some amount of volatility depending on the interest rate, or there's a credit risk. So it's not that debt mutual funds are without any kind of risk, but more or less they will tell you something called YTM, which is yield to maturity, minus the expenses, and you will have a ballpark figure of what to expect.
Right.
You might get a little alpha over a fixed deposit. So yes, you should definitely consider a debt mutual fund as well. For taxation purposes, both are equal. So that's another thing that you have to consider when you're investing. The tax planning.
Very important when you're doing your financial planning.
Yeah, because it's everything is the return you get minus the possibility of tax, right? So there's always a risk return matrix for somebody who's a very, very safe investor. A fixed deposit, or say a money market or a liquid or a low duration mutual fund is a very good option. As you go slightly higher on the risk return matrix, you could possibly invest into a little longer period, debt mutual fund or something called an equity savings fund, which has a very, very small component of equity. Okay, you could say about 15% of equities and the rest are in arbitrage or bonds.
Right.
You go one step higher, you are a good investor for something called a balanced advantage fund, which would typically have about 30 to 35% of equities, 30 to 35% of arbitrage, and the rest in bonds. If you are still a higher risk investor, you can select a diversified mutual fund or possibly an ETF or an index fund. And then if you want to take more risk, you can be a direct equity investor or a sectoral or thematic mutual fund investor.
What should one be careful about, and what are some of the viable options for investment?
No, I think typically it goes according to the, your age. If you're a younger investor, you're very comfortable with a robo-advisor.
Yeah.
You're very comfortable with the algos.
Yeah.
And also what you're putting, at stake is much lower because your investable surplus is lower.
Right.
So I feel they should, experiment in these kind of, formats, because that's the way that, the market and the younger people think more in terms of machines rather than, people. Having said that, you can't take away the brick and mortar, human touch out of this, because the algo will only go that way, that limit. It's not going to foresee what kind of problems that you will undertake, because sometimes there will be a job loss. And when you start when you start working, you'll be very excited, but 6 months later, you don't have a job.
Correct.
So a financial planner who's actually a human being will put away some amount into an emergency fund and with their own experience and expertise, be able to give a plan to you, which is slightly better, not slightly, much better. Mature investors will always go in for, a physical planner. But the younger people, in my opinion, do experiment. And I mean, I've always encouraged even my own children to do it because it's part of the learning process.
True.
So it's a bit of both. You can use the, AI and the algos to do your mathematical calculations. At the same time, the planner is also using some kind of, tool which is helping him or her to, achieve your ideal financial plan. So I think the two in combination is probably better than the, it's not a zero-sum game. So you use a little bit of both.
Right. Before I let you go, any success stories that you can share for our audiences to take home when it comes to what a good financial planning can actually mean in the long term?
I had a lady investor who hadn't invested with me throughout her working journey, but when she retired, she brought in her entire, gratuity, PPF, her entire investable corpus, and she's been with me for nearly 6 to 7 years. And every time she meets me, she says, you have nothing but blessings for me, because I just don't feel the lack of my monthly income. We've worked out a plan for her which allows her to, draw her last drawn salary, and along with inflation, every couple of years we would increase that figure. She had a sizable amount for us to do that planning. But this is not something that I would advise. I would prefer that the investor is with us throughout the investment journey, so that, you
came in early when they started making that money.
But I remember her because she, always has sort of, gives me the blessing. So I sort of appreciate her. We had, some of them are, women-centric stories, which I'm passionate about, helping women investors. So there was another lady who got divorced with 2 young daughters, and, she was really sort of completely off track when this happened. But, she also had less investable surplus when she started her journey.
Right.
But whatever she had, we managed to, build the corpus. She educated her 2 daughters. Both of them are working now. She's managed to buy a 1-bedroom house. Nice. And also she's retired now, and she's, enjoying her sort of life. So these, couple of these stories, there are also people, Sundar, I must say, he had, had aspiration of sending his, son to the US for engineering a degree. So we had planned out where, at this particular year, I think 2021 or 22, he would start getting some amount of his fees back. So he had worked towards that for, at least 10 years, and he was able to send his son, to the US for his education, and that was also a very important moment for him as well as for us. So there are countless stories like that, all based on the retirement planning, education planning, even emergency planning, because suddenly I find that, in the COVID time, a lot of people had, sort of did not have the jobs.
Emergencies
emergency planning. So the corpus was able to help them survive for 6 to 8 months until they, relocated themselves and got the jobs.
Thank you so much for taking time out and explaining to our audience so much and sharing those wonderful insights.
Thank you so much for having me.
And thank you everyone for joining us today on this enlightening webisode of Personal Finance Unlocked by One Finance, powered by Moneycontrol. Stay tuned to unlock more secrets of personalized financial planning and take charge of your financial future. Thank you so much.
One Finance and Moneycontrol present Personal Finance Unlocked. Download the One Finance app. Investments in the securities market are subject to market risks. Read all the related documents carefully before investing.